Thousands of people in the metro are waiting today, watching Capitol Hill as lawmakers debate a bill that could lower health insurance costs. The vote comes as ACA policyholders face the reality of much higher premiums. First Alert 6 Ron Johnson has this story.
Just to let you know,
For Gladys Harrison, her fear of having to pay more for insurance is now a reality.
my insurance did go up. The coverage is less. My deductible went up. Prescription prices went up. Visits to the doctor went up.
Without the tax credits through the Affordable Care Act, her new premium is more than $100 more each month. As a small business owner, she says it makes money that's already tight even tighter.
Well, how do I pay myself more? The only way that I can do that is by charging my customers more or go get another job. I don't have time to work another job, you know.
Higher premiums aren't just affecting policyholders. Healthcare navigators like Edwin Garcia have noticed a drop in people signing up.
Last year, they were getting a subsidy for $400, $500 a month. This year, they get nothing, so they will have to come up with $1,000 insurance premium a month. And I mean, that's unaffordable.
He says the increase in prices is leading to more people going uninsured.
Some of these people will end up at a hospital having hospital bills of probably hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then these people are going to end up filing bankruptcy. So
Garcia urges ACA policyholders to talk with insurance professionals about their options. Meanwhile, Harrison is holding on to hope and encouraging others to do the same.
If we lock hands and do this together, we can make this what seemingly could be devastating for a lot of people. We can turn it around and make it something good.
In Omaha, Ron Johnson, First Alert 6.